We begin with major breaking news out of the Middle East, where we can now report that negotiators in Qatar have reached a Gaza ceasefire deal, and it has been accepted by Hamas. The agreement lays out a 6-week initial ceasefire phase that would begin in a day or two. Israelis go through a cabinet process. After that, there would be a 48-hour wait, and then a gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces. But first, the most important thing is that after 48 hours from whether it's Thursday night or Friday, the hostages would begin to be released from Gaza as early as this weekend, Sunday. Israeli forces then would be withdrawing from central Gaza, from populated areas. There'd be a return of displaced Palestinians to North Gaza. Under the deal, 33 hostages would come out initially, including all women, including soldiers, civilians, children, and men over 50. We understand in that group there would be some Americans. We know that there are at least 3 surviving Americans that we've been in touch with. And one of the elderly is Keith Siegel, Aviva Siegel's husband, who is 65 years old and would be one of the first Americans. He would be the first American to come out, as well as injured Americans. There are 2 others that we know of who would likely be coming out in that first group. And we begin our coverage of this major breaking news with NBC News international correspondent Danielle Hamagian live in Tel Aviv. Danielle, so what are we hearing about where the negotiations are? My information is that it's been confirmed by officials here in Washington, but that they are, by agreement, they're letting the Qataris announce it first in Doha, who have really been the go-betweens with Hamas and who have been the principal point for the negotiations, with participation, of course, from Egypt. Danielle?
You're absolutely right, Andrea, and we are being briefed on the fact that this is it. The deal is done, and we are now waiting, as you say, for the mediators in Doha. The Qatari PM will be holding a press conference, and we await now the official announcement. But to think that this has taken 15 months when most of those involved in these talks thought that it would take perhaps a matter of days, perhaps weeks, to get all those hostages back. It's taken 15 agonizing months, agony for the civilians in Gaza who have endured relentless airstrikes, agony for the hostages who, for the most part, and presumably have been held in tunnels, and agony for the family members of those hostages who, in some cases live just a few miles away from Gaza. They go to bed at night, wake up in the morning, not knowing if their loved ones are dead or alive. But here we are, and we are waiting for the Qatari Prime Minister to lay out the details of this proposal that has been approved and accepted by both sides. What we know, according to the Reuters news agency, is that, as has been reported over the past few days, we know that in the first stage of this deal, which would last 6 weeks, 33 hostages will be released on humanitarian ground. It was 34 up until last week. 1 more hostage was found dead in a tunnel. They are going to be all women, children, and civilians over the age of 50, those who are ill and severely injured. What we now know is that in return, in exchange for the release of those hostages, hundreds and hundreds of Palestinian detainees will be released. Now, it's worth pointing out here that since October 7th, 2023, Israel has arrested thousands of people in the West Bank, many of them held in what's called administrative detention. They have not been charged, they've not been tried, and Israel stands accused of amassing all these Palestinians just for this moment to be able to release them in this deal. So what we understand, according to various reports in Israeli media, as well as the Reuters news agency, is that for every civilian civilian hostage who will be released, 30 Palestinians will be released in exchange. For every female soldier, 50 Palestinian prisoners will be released. Now, according to a senior Israeli official, they said to me that they know that there was a price to pay for the hostages, and they know that there was a, quote, special price to pay for the female hostages. So hundreds are expected to be released. And during this period, there'll be a gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces from central Gaza, from the more densely populated areas, to a buffer zone along the border. They will also withdraw from what's called the Netzarim corridor, which runs east to west and effectively splits the Gaza Strip in half, allowing for the hundreds of thousands of Gazans who have been displaced back to northern Gaza. Andrea.